So, you like jazz? Hello, it's the Gemin again. In this video, I'll be trying something new. I've been building and exploring Gunpla for a little over a year now. I've seen so many different ways to nip, to clean up nubs, to paint your model kit, to modify, to everything. But for this video specifically, we'll be going through the basics of the basics, which is the simple snap build. A little disclaimer here, I am not the best at this. I only have a little over a year of experience with Gunpla, and this method is the way I specifically do things. So I'm not saying that any other method is wrong. This just so happens to be the way I'm most comfortable with. So imitate these tips at your own risk. So, snap building. This is the first thing you'd want to do when you buy your first model kit. Snap building is basically just cutting out the parts from the runners, cleaning up the nubs, and snapping the pieces together without any extra detailing of any kind. It's the simplest yet most intoxicating part of the whole Gunpla hobby. Just putting that last piece to complete your kit is just so satisfying. I want to share this stuff in this video so more noobs like me can avoid ugly stress marks on darker types of plastic and gouging of plastic. You will know the plastic has stress marks when you have whitening on your dark colored pieces, and you know your pieces have been gouged when you cut too close to the piece and you dig some holes into the precious innocent Gunpla. Without further ado, let's talk about the snap building process. So let's prepare all the stuff we need. First, you're gonna need your kit of choice. For this video, we won't complete it, but I'll be using the kit commissioned to me, the Master Grade Zaku 2 2.0 Black TriStar Custom. Did an unboxing of this, so check that out if you want to. And don't worry, the steps used on this kit should work on any kind of part that's attached to a runner. So go ahead and use what kit you're comfortable with. Next, we need the tool to take the parts off the runners. The nippers. There are a lot of different nippers out there, but these are the ones Bandai sells. I think they're called the entry nippers. These are kinda basic, but they're not entirely cheap. This comes out at around 600 pesos, I think. Some people actually use regular household nail clippers, which I have done, but I don't think I'll be going back to that because having these just feels more comfy in the hand. And then to clean up the nubs, we are going to need something to sand the nubs. Preferably different kinds of grit going up. So here now I have my metal hobby files, which should be around 100 or 200 grit mark. Of course, you can also get that grit in sandpaper form if you want, since these metal files are pretty expensive at around 600. But they'll last you a long time, so you can weigh your option. And then to make the parts smoother, you should have some sandpaper around 400 grit to kind of buff the nubs. And finally, some higher grit sandpaper that's around maybe 1000 or 1500 and up to polish it up and make the sanded nub as unnoticeable as possible. These are the only things you actually need, but one really useful but kinda risky and tricky tool to use is the hobby knife. This one is an X-Acto knife, got it from National Bookstore. I don't exactly remember how much I got it for. This is completely optional for snap building, but I use mine all the time and I love using it, so I'll just go ahead and show it to you guys later. Now that we have everything we need, let's start building. Okay, so first thing you're gonna want to do is arrange your runners alphabetically. Runners have labels, and arranging them alphabetically just makes looking for the parts really easy. You can just lay them there in the box. Useful tip if your kit comes with some poly caps, the rubbery squishy parts. Have them separate from your other runners and you'll have an easier time to get. Since we have that arranged, we can now go into the manual and cut the pieces out of the runners. But you have to be careful not to cut them right out the part. Doing that will more often than not cause some gouging at the pieces. You'll have ugly holes into your pieces that's simply no good. Did that before I knew anything about Gunpla, and my first kits have absolutely ugly nub marks. So cut them at a distance from the actual part you need. Some people cut really far like here, but I usually cut just around. Okay, so now we have the part that we need off the runner, but now we have these weird bits poking out. If they're long like this, you can just trim it down again with your nippers. But don't trim all the way to the part. Then we shave off the nub with the lowest grit file or sandpaper that we have. but also not all the way to the part, because if that file sandpaper digs into the part, it's as bad as gouging them out with the nippers. So just let the file or sandpaper do the work. Don't put too much weight on the piece you're working on. And then when the nub is just a bit over the surface of the piece, go with your next higher grit sandpaper, which I guess you could let it reach the actual part now, but just be careful that you don't overdo it. So now that you've sanded down to the surface, you can now polish it with the highest grit that you have to make sure that you have the best surface for your piece. You can actually keep going with higher and higher grits to polish it even more, or you could find one of those sanding blocks which has these steps labeled on them, but I don't have any of that right now, so I can't really show you that. So now let's use the hobby knife. Be sure you're not a kid, because this is a very dangerous tool. So anybody under 13, don't even try using this. What you're gonna want to do is try to shave off the nub with your knife. This is why it's dangerous. You're gonna want to shave towards yourself. Doing this just makes sure you have the most control over the blade and you don't mess up the part. You have to try to slide the blade in the same direction the plane of the part is going, or else you'll risk carving into the part. And depending on how much you are able to shave off the nub, you can go for the buffing grit and then the polishing grit. But if you've done a really good job, you can go straight into the polishing grit. Still, the best way is buffing before polishing. You'll run into difficulties with the hobby knife method if the nubs are really thick. For those kinds of nubs, it would be best to use the regular sanding method to minimize the risk of ruining your parts. Like I said earlier, you can use these methods on any model kit, be it an SD, high grade, real grade, master grade, or perfect grade. It's basically the same steps for all of them, it's just more difficult with how many more times you're gonna have to repeat the steps. Now you can go through the whole manual and actually cut and clean all the parts before you put the pieces together, or you can cut and clean each piece and just assemble as you go along the manual. That much is up to you, because either way, what's fun is fun, you know? But for me, I like building my kits as I go along the manual.
You should have done this. That's wrong. Never do that.
Again, I'm no professional at this. I just felt like sharing whatever it is I've learned that feels comfortable in building my Gunpla. So, okay, you don't have to follow any of the tips I gave, but if you're curious, you might just find the right way for you as well. I'll be reviewing these kits right here and do some comparisons, so make sure you hit that subscribe button to catch that video when it comes out, and so you can decide to get these kits for yourself or not. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned a bit from this Gunpla noob on the internet. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Bye!